Thank you very much for returning to listen to the Compassionate Capitalist Show, all my compassionate capitalists that are out there as we kick off 2022. You know, what better way to do that than to erase, just dismiss whatever challenges of 2021, and let's focus on the opportunity and the potential and the future that you have in front of you in 2022, and do and take action now on what you need to do in order to make 2022 the most successful year you've ever had in your business. And whether that is that you're an executive in a company and you're trying to take your company to new heights, or your own career to new heights, or whether you are an investor in companies and you want to uplift those entrepreneurs that you are investing in, or you're one of those entrepreneurs that has this great passion and this great vision for something that you want to do to change the world, and you want to be out there, and you don't know what that, it seems like there's this invisible wall that's sort of stopping you from achieving all the things that you want to achieve, then this is your show. Okay. This is the show that will change 2022 for you. I am 100% confident about that. And that is because of my guest that I have on here today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him in just a minute, John Mitchell. And if you're watching the video, he can wave at you now. So, you know, when John came to me and we talked about being a guest on this show, we're so aligned in our parallel purposes and passion. And that is for people to achieve all that they can achieve, because it is through our financial success that we can have the kind of balance to do other things that we're passionate about, that when we can get to a point that we're not trading hours for dollars, that we can achieve that success, that we can do more. And he has done that. He has done that in part because of what we're going to talk about today. So this is Think and Grow Rich, which is, you know, the book that has created more millionaires than any other book in the world. It keeps coming up. And if you're one of those that just went, really, Think and Grow Rich again? Listen, there's a reason why it is the foundation for so much we have to do. And in my own story, when I decided to launch the Compassionate Capitalist movement, it was coming back into Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich that really helped me get into a position to release the stuff from my past and believe I had the potential to do that in the future. And John's going to share how he's taking the concepts of Think and Grow Rich and to a whole new level that actually is a blueprint, is a method for you to be able to implement the success that comes out of that. If you do it, because as he says, the book only gives you half of it, right? And he's really put it down into a scientific basis. I mean, this show is called the leverage your success through science, and that's the science that we're going to talk about. So buckle in and listen up. And let me tell you about John. John is a serial entrepreneur and has created this top application in the world. Okay, so that's really what we're here to talk about off of this top book of success, Think and Grow Rich. As I said, it's created more millionaires than anything else, really, with having been read by, and I think this is a low number if you think about how long it's been out there, because it's almost practically in the public domain now. 100 million people worldwide have said to have read this book. And if you count the people that have reread it, you know, I've read it a couple of times, but and go back to it when I struggle with certain stuff. And I did a series on this podcast back in 2015 when I was rediscovering how to get rid of my stinking thinking from the past to go forth and be able to do this compassionate capitalist movement. And my book and write my book, because at the time I was like, I know all this stuff, but who's going to believe me that I can tell people how to be an angel investor? And who's going to believe that? Well, I had to overcome my own stinking thinking and negative, you know, tapes that I was doing at that time. And so, you know, there's how many people have reread it and applied it. And I did a series that you can go back and maybe I'll link to the page on those, but I interviewed a successful person in each of the topic areas that had specifically addressed that in their life for their own success. So, what he's doing in this is that he's going to give us this full secret today, not just half the secret, how expanding beyond that. He's going to talk about how he applied it in his life. It's a 12-minute technique that you can do every day. And he saw his income. This is always the thing, is the proof is in the pudding, right? You want to hear, does it work? Well, he saw his yearly income go to over 5 million a year after 20 years of, hey, like so many of us, $200,000 or $300,000 a year. And, that part of that was the business that he had started. We're going to talk about this, but he had a business that was $25 million a year with 175 employees after he started building this up. And so it's, and then it gave him all kinds of opportunities to pursue his own passions, which hopefully he'll share with us. So with all of that, thank you, John. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show today on the Compassionate Capitalist Show.
Karen, I'm glad to be here.
So let's talk about that. A lot of entrepreneurs out here are listening. What was it that made you realize that, the income that a lot of people would think is a good lifestyle at $300,000 a year, something different? How'd you break the code on that? And then, because you said you were a serial entrepreneur, and talk about the business that you built as a result of that, the $25 million business.
Well, basically, Karen, when I turned 50, I just wasn't as successful as I thought I should be. And I essentially had two goals in my life: to make enough money so I didn't have to work, and to find the woman of my dreams. And so at 50, I was falling short on both. And on the money, I like you mentioned, I always did okay, a couple 100,000 net a year, but never close to $1 million. And when I turned 50, I know this sounds materialistic, but I'm like, I'm not going to have the exceptional life I really want unless I start netting over $1 million a year. And on the girl at 50, I'd never been married, although I must say I did a lot of interviewing. Although my friends would probably call it begging, I prefer to call it interviewing. But so at 50, I'm frustrated, and so as I'm thinking about that, how do I change this 20-year history of low six figures a year? And I don't know, Karen, probably 3 months after I turned 50, I'm laying in bed and it just comes to me, this pearl of wisdom, to just go find the top book in the world on success and apply that book literally word for word to my life. And so I didn't know if there was one book above all others. And so I immediately jump out of bed and go do the research, and I discover, as you just mentioned, there's one book that's been read by 100 million people. And the next best-selling book on success has been read by less than 10 million people. So it's the top book in the world on success by a factor of 10. And so once I read that, I'm like, well, here we go. This is exactly what I'm looking for. I was like a heat-seeking missile. The next day, I bought the book, read the book, and then I discovered the problem. The book says there's a secret for success, but he only gives you half of the secret. It's on the reader to figure out the other half. And the half that he gives you is everything starts with a thought. Well, where do you go with that? I don't know. When you first read it, did that catch your attention?
Well, I knew that thoughts, were first and foremost, right? And I had, sort of gathered, maybe because of workshops, that you write things down and repeat them. But I had also had looked into and listened to The Secret, which is kind of,
Right.
A variation of the Think and Grow Rich. And so, yeah, I got the thought part of it. And because I have read this in the past, but it's really hard to get your head around thoughts really manifest itself into your actions as
Right.
much as it does, the connection between that. I watched part of your video, your intro video, to this idea that you have, or this process that you teach people. And it really seemed to help clarify why it's not, people that don't believe it, it's sort of like, oh, it's mumbo jumbo, whatever. But that focus, the subconscious mind, and I think that's part of the science that you talk about must be, is because of
Right.
the impact of our conscious thoughts on our subconscious mind.
Well, and when I read in the book, everything starts with a thought. I'm like, where do I go with that? And so I ended up moping around probably for 2 or 3 weeks, and then finally one day, maybe 3 weeks after I read the book, I'm like, just man up and figure out the full secret. And so I then immersed myself in the book for a couple of months, and I figure out the full secret and a way to apply it. And so I'm applying it to a new business I started in the reverse mortgage field. And quickly my income starts doubling to where, about 3 or 4 years later, I was blessed to be making $5 million a year, which was a 25-time increase over what I made the prior 20 years. And
Yeah. Wow.
Karen, what was so cool was I could see why it was happening. I could just feel that I was
Ah,
playing the game of being an entrepreneur and the game of life at a higher level. And it actually works because it focuses you only on what moves the needle. It triples your discipline, so then you can do those key habits. And then I also saw that it caused new ideas to consistently come in my head every week. And that's sort of from three different aspects of the leveraging process. And so I became fascinated by how you could take two key scientific principles and so materially impact your success that and to wrap this up, I finally had enough money so I didn't have to work. So I sold my company, and probably 2 months after I sold the company, I met the former chancellor and president at the University of Texas, and he says, "Hey, you got to teach this at Texas, and why don't we teach it together?" So that started the journey about 7 years ago.
okay. And so that was how you started to think it, be it.
That's right. That's
Okay,
right.
so real quick, folks, thinkitbeit.com is the website to go to. And I believe with a CC at the end, we're going to have something special for you for those that are listening to the Compassionate Capitalist Show. So you started this up 7 years ago, and and the purpose of that was to really, your passion and purpose became one, to reveal to everybody that wanted it the secret of how they could unlock the power of Think and Grow Rich that they'd not been able to do on their own.
Right. And I don't know if most people appreciate this, but Thinking Real Rich is about applying science to your life to up your success. And it's based on one fundamental principle that 95% of your daily actions are unconscious. And so, Karen, think about that. And I know people throw facts around, and in this world, we don't know what to believe or not to believe, but learning that 95% of your daily actions are unconscious probably was the most fundamental, important thing I ever learned in my life. Because what I realized is if that's true, to have a higher level of success than I'm currently having, I have to influence those unconscious daily actions. I mean, it's pure math, right? And you do that by proactively and with intention influencing the subconscious mind. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So let's talk about that. So how do you approach that with, influencing your subconscious mind to not get into autopilot? Because I know for myself, and you and I talked before the show, that, and I think a lot of driven people, particularly when they've got a big purpose of what they're trying to accomplish, have great intentions on how they're going to do their day when they first get up, and they think before they get up, this is what I'm going to do today. This is what I'm going to do before they go to bed. And then they find themselves an hour, 2 hours into the day doing other things, whatever.
Right.
So that, like, I 100% relate. And I would bet that some of the people listening in this audience can relate to whatever they just did today. Was they did not start the day and do the first couple of hours what they intended to do. They ended up doing other stuff that they needed to get done, but wasn't the things that moved the needle, as you
Right.
said.
Well, and Karen, uh, everybody has a fundamental problem that we have to overcome. We're all innately wired for survival. And again, 95% of our actions are unconscious. So what that really means is that when your eyes open each morning, you're on autopilot most of the day, innately wired to be fear-based, reactive, and negative. Well, that's exactly the opposite of how you need to be if you want to be productive and creative and happy, right? And so the only way you can override that innate programming to be fear-based and reactive is to overlay programming that leverages you and causes you to be productive and creative. And so that's what this 12-minute a day technique I'm going to teach your audience actually does.
Okay. Well, and also your partner became your partner because she had experienced it herself, right? And in implementing what you're going to tell us right here in just a few 12 minutes, Kelly Hatfield joined you because and shared your vision, your purpose, your passion, and wanted to help spread that to the rest of the world as well.
Right, right. And I think so many people today, after what we've gone through the last 2 years, we're seeing the great resignation. And I was just reading where what 40% of employees either have resigned or are thinking about resigning. And mostly what I work with is entrepreneurs and business owners. Well, they can't resign. They are the job. But everybody, I think, over the last 2 years has gone, this way I'm doing life just isn't working.
That's right.
And as you'll see, what I'm to teach people is way more than 12 minutes a day. That's the easy part, but that's also the doable part. But I think people are really open to another way of playing this game of life. Don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I mean, you can't continue to do the same thing and expect different results, right? That's the whole thing. That's like one of those things, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome.
Right, right. So if you don't mind, let me explain
Let's do it.
some basic science, and then I'm going to tell you how this 12-minute a day technique works.
Yeah, let's do it.
So here's the basic science. Here's how the human mind works. The conscious mind sets your intention and is influenced by logic. The subconscious mind controls your everyday actions, and it's influenced only by repetition. It doesn't care about logic. And I'll give you a good example of this. Let's say you want to lose weight. Well, the conscious mind sets the intention based on the health benefits of losing weight. But people aren't losing weight because lack of intention. They're not losing weight because they're not influencing that part of their brain that actually controls their daily actions, more specifically exercising and eating. And so once you sort of understand how the human mind works, that again, conscious mind sets the intention, but the subconscious mind controls your actions, then you have to influence those unconscious actions because, and this maybe should be obvious to everybody, the cumulative effect of your daily actions determines your success in each area of your life. And again, I sort of go back to this fundamental thing of 95% of your daily actions are unconscious. I see that when people get that, and you can Google it, you can literally dial in what percentage of my daily actions are unconscious. In big dark letters, it'll say 95%. But once people get that, then from there on, they're like, wow, okay, I get it, what he's talking about. And that's why I say that learning that was the most significant thing that ever happened in my life. And so with that as a basis, let me explain how this 12-minute a day technique impacts the daily actions. So again, in Think and Grow Rich, he says everything starts with a thought. Well, what I discovered after months of immersing myself in the book, what the real central concept is what you envision in detail on a daily basis is what shows up in your life. And let me say that again. What you envision in detail on a daily basis is what shows up in your life. And so what that really means is when you step back from your life and you create immense clarity, exactly the person you want to be, exactly what you want to accomplish, and precisely how you're going to achieve your clearly defined goals. Once you establish all that clarity, then you take that clarity, we put it on our template, and you feed it to yourself every day. 12 minutes, it takes about 12 minutes a day. Well, after you do that, approximately 21 days, then the magic happens. The science kicks in, and what you're feeding yourself starts to influence those unconscious daily actions and thoughts. And those upgraded daily actions then create the life you want. I mean, it's powerfully simple. Does that make sense?
So that's the faith part, I guess, in a way, because it does make sense. Just that, part of it is, you might have this vision. Oh, I envision myself as a successful CEO, getting this reward or getting this outcome or going public, as some people might do, or, some sort of accomplishment, 3 years, 4 years, whatever
Right.
from now. But it's a hazy, gray, blurry mess between where you are now and where you are there. And so what ends up happening is that you still have that, but the timeline just keeps going, and you still want it 3 years out, but guess what? It's 2 years later and it's another 3 years out, right? It's not a year away because you haven't changed it. So what you're talking about, if you have faith to do this for 21 days, you'll start to get the clarity of what the pathway is to that vision that you have for yourself. Is that right?
Well, not quite. Let me adjust that a little so you understand this a little better. So, the first part is establishing clarity. And again, we're taking your life and dividing it into the 5 key areas: yourself, your health, your romantic relationship, your spirituality, and your career. And so we're defining what the ideal you looks like in each area of your life. And keep in mind, the subconscious mind does not respond to things that are general. You have to be specific. Like, you can't just say, I'm going to be successful, or I am successful. It doesn't know what to do with that. It's got to be specific. And so as you're defining your ideal self in those 5 areas, you're also defining the improvements you want in your life. You're also defining your top 3 goals. One goal will be in your career, one in your health, one in your marriage or romantic relationship. And you're defining, you're basically living your life quarter by quarter. So you're changing your goals, and each goal has the why behind it and the key behaviors associated with it and a time frame associated with it. And so as you feed that cell, all that stuff that's very specific, then it starts impacting your daily actions. And so the hard part, Karen, is creating that clarity. The easy part is feeding it to yourself 12 minutes a day.
Okay.
That follow that?
Sure. So it is your roadmap, that because you got the details, that you are planting those seeds into your subconscious mind with a consistency, so that it becomes the unconscious actions that you do every day because you have remapped your unconscious brain.
Right. And oftentimes people say to me, "Why, how the heck do you expect me to believe that you did something 12 minutes a day and it takes your income to $5 million a year after many years of low 6 figures a year?" And that's a great question. And the reason it impacted my income so much, and this is what we do with each client, is we define, what do you want your business to look like 3 years from now? What are you netting? How many employees do you have? Then what are the 5 or 6 milestones to get there? Then what's your succinct business plan? what's your strategy for success? Also succinct. What are the 2 or 3 things that move the needle in your business? What is the linchpin issue to go to the next level? But those, 6 or 7 things, that takes some real effort to create that clarity and make it succinct and specific. But you feed all that stuff to yourself, watch what happens. I mean, it completely changes the dynamics of how you operate.
So very good. And and that happens in the morning to
Right.
set your day, not before you go to bed, or do you do it twice a day, or does it
No,
matter?
it's best to do it as soon as you wake up, because not to get too much deeper in the science, but when you wake up, you're closer to an alpha state in terms of brain waves, and that's when you're most receptive to it. And so you don't want to get other stuff going before you sort of feed this to yourself. And one other thing I think you'd find interesting, this is only for driven people.
Sure.
If you're not driven, this is not for you. And maybe the best way to explain that is a story. A few years ago, I decided I was going to go find the top expert in the world on success and show this to him and see what he thought about it. And that guy, in my opinion, is Darren Hardy. And so I end up spending 3 days with Darren, and I sit down and I show him my template and explain it all. And he looks at it and goes, this is pretty good. Then he looks at it closer. He goes, wow, this is excellent. But he says, John, people aren't going to do this. They're not going to spend 12 minutes a day on this. And I'm like, Darren, how the heck can that be? It caused my own income to go up by 25 times what it was the prior 20 years. Time magazine did a cover story on the science behind it, and we're applying the top book in the world on success to their life. I mean, what do you mean they're not going to spend 12 friggin' minutes a day? And he laughs at me, and he goes, well, John, you'll spend 12 friggin' minutes a day. So will I. But he says, the dirty little secret of the success and human achievement field is that most people won't do anything to impact their success and achievement in life. And he says, you need to understand that, and you only need to show this to people that are driven, because driven people will love it, but most people will not. And boy, has that proven to be true. I mean, that was so helpful.
Yeah. Well, it's the kind of thing, uh, you know, so many people attend workshops or go, buy this, that, or the other, and then it sits on the shelf because they don't implement it. And that could be a combination of this, I call it a scratch and win mentality that a lot of times entrepreneurs have when it comes to starting a business and raising capital and the things that they need to do, right? And they don't understand, very similar to the hard work that you say of you got to do this hard work to lay it out so that you can plant those proper seeds in your brain and rewire your brain when it doesn't seem logical. Same thing when it comes to, doing a business. It's not so much that you have to have a pure roadmap, but there's some really serious things that entrepreneurs need to figure out before they ask for money. And
Right.
even when it's a regular business that's just kind of rolling, right? I mean, I know for many years I never had a business plan. I just kept doing whatever I was doing,
Right.
and it's a lot of times we, like us in the financial side of it, say people don't put a business plan together till they need to go to the bank. And so they
Yeah.
don't really know what they're doing and where they're going. And people just, hammer it out every day and then wake up in December and go, is it another year? So I totally get it. I mean, it's a lot of people made money on people buying stuff and not doing it and then buying something else, you know what I mean?
Well, and this idea of driven people, I think that to some degree it has a negative connotation. I think being driven is great, but I think that if you're driven, you need to be focused and channeled. And that's to me what this does. And as we work with clients, my goal is always to double the income they've made last year. And if I can't do that, I won't take them as a client. And because my goal ultimately is to take them to netting 7 figures a year. And today, half my clients are already netting 7 figures a year, and half of them are, in the 6-figure a year. And one of the things I see that, I think we're successful because we're really selective about who we accept into the program. We want to make sure they're really going to do the work that is required to create this clarity. Of course, we're going to help them, but it still takes work. It's not easy. This isn't a get rich quick thing, and we also guarantee, give them a money back guarantee, because this just works. I mean, it's pure science. It can't not work, but you got to do it.
Right.
And so that's why having a money back guarantee, we're selective about who we bring into it,
Yeah.
because we want to make sure they're going to do as much work as we're going to do. So
Yeah.
that's our approach to it.
So let me ask you this, because this is kind of one of those thoughts that people that are listening might have, and I've thought it in the past where, they think, oh, that successful person, that person they talk about working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. And then on the flip side, you have this person that says the 4-hour work week or the 4-day work week, whatever, these success principles. And so
Right.
it's like this full wide spectrum. And, on one end, it's like, I would like to have the success but I really don't, because of family obligations or just where I am in my life, I don't want to work 60, 70 hours a work week, but I don't believe I could do what I need to do with 4 hours a week or even four part days a week or something like that. So it feels like after listening to what you've said here today, there's something in between, and where you find that happy medium is when you control your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, in how you direct, so that you can get more done in the time that you do, and it's more directed specifically to the things that are going to achieve the outcomes you want.
Karen, that is a great point. I mean, I think that really gets at the essence of it. And I saw that in my 30s and 40s, I'd work 70 hours a week, and I worked harder than all my friends. And I thought, well, I deserve big success. But when I got into my 50s, I saw that working hard will net you 6 figures a year, but it doesn't net you 7. You got to work smart. And that's the big thing I saw. And I went from working 70 hours a week to working about, I don't know, 45 hours a week when I was, netting 5 million a year. And I'm like, wow, I see how this works. It's all working smart, not working hard. And one of the things I learned from studying this, and Darren Hardy was helpful in this, over the last 20 years, there's been this intense interest in what separates the mega achievers from everybody else. And what the research shows is that it comes down to 2 things: control of self and focus. Well, control of self is your daily actions. Focus is your ongoing thoughts. And that's exactly what this 12-minute a day technique influences. And before, you and I sort of were talking about meditation briefly. Well, this is the opposite of meditation. Meditation quiets the mind. This focuses the mind. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah. So when people go through this process, I mean, that's interesting, that comparison. I was sort of thinking about a hybrid of you're getting the part of the meditation is to not let small things bother you, to leave it, to sort of look at your thoughts as if they're passing through, so that you can get what they consider sort of this inner focus of just your being, that you're not distracted by all these other kinds of things, where applying yours to, it's almost like it's a if I could think of a different word to go in front of meditation, right? Because
Well,
it's
I would just call it focused meditation.
yeah, because you're focusing on what it is that you want your body and your mind to focus on through the rest of the day so that you can achieve these things and not be distracted by all the other little stuff.
Right, right. And you know, I tell you, this is how I would suggest your audience uh, jump into this as sort of a first step. So this is all about you know, proactively influencing the subconscious mind. And I see that the first step for that is to set aside time each week to just think, to just think. And you know, you see that the top people in the world, people like Elon Musk and Bill Gates, they do this weekly habit a couple of times at least a week. And this is way deeper thinking than normal thinking. But here's how this sort of works. Um, you have to figure out, okay, exactly when am I going to do it? I personally do it Wednesday mornings, and Saturday or Sunday mornings. Then as to where to do it, you want to pick your favorite place at your house or in nature. Like I live on Lake Austin here in Austin, and so I go out on my deck. And then how to do it. Each each thinking session is about 30 minutes, and you're using what I call your thinking tablet, which is basically just a blank sheets of paper in a nice leather binder. And so when you are in your nice comfy place and you're staring down at that blank sheet of paper, uh, there's sort of three simple parts to this. The first part is you just let whatever come into your head come, and you just scribble out whatever is coming. Don't worry about your penmanship, just let it flow. And believe me, things will come. And then the second thing you do after you've done that probably for 10 minutes, then think of a question for yourself. And by virtue of asking yourself a question, it changes the dynamics of how your mind works. And you figure out the question, and then start figuring out what the answer to the question is, and watch your mind go deeper and deeper. And then the third part, after you're finished with that, and again, about 30 minutes, you draw a line under the last thing you wrote, and you list, here are the takeaways, and here's the 2 or 3 action steps. And then you take those action steps and put them on next week's to-dos so that you're connecting your thinking with taking actions. And so that's what I would like to teach your audience. And I have a gift for you. But does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So that's like a that's the part of moving yourself forward. So you've got this process that you do for 12 minutes a day that gives you clarity and gets you started right. But as you assess what you did, what you need, you know, it's the to me it makes the 12-minute part sort of a living process because you're
Yes.
refreshing it with whatever the current circumstances are, new opportunities. I mean, I do the thinking part. I get these ideas, and I was like, oh wow, I'll just sort of like, and I have to go. And unfortunately, I don't always have a pen on me, right? And
Right.
so it's like being conscious about going out and doing that, where you're equipped to capture those ideas that come from inside you as to a door that it opens or an opportunity or a different way to approach it, you know, or how you get a new piece of information and how are you going to apply it to your business. That happens. You give yourself the opportunity to let your mind figure out how to apply that when you silence the other stuff to take that time.
Exactly. You know, it's how you make micro adjustments to your direction, these thinking sessions, and like you alluded to, this 12 minutes a day, you've got it on a template, and it's evolving as your life is evolving, and you're seeing the micro adjustments in these thinking sessions. And I'll give you an example with a recent client I had, how this sort of worked for him. So I asked him to, you know, do his thinking session around what moves the needle. So he comes back to me, tells me he did that. And this guy is up in Portland, and he's in the storage facility business, and he's successful. I mean, he's a sharp guy, makes a couple of $1 million a year net doing it, and he wants to just go to this higher level. And so he comes back after his thinking session. He says, well, I see that what moves the needle is getting properties that I've already acquired, getting them fully developed and getting them leased and getting them on board ASAP. And so he tells me that, and I'm like, nah, I don't think so. I don't think so. And I said, why don't we do a thinking session together? So we sit down, and I say, okay, let me ask a question. What do you think your special talent is? He goes, well, I have a unique ability to see opportunities in the storage space that other people don't see. And I'm like, okay, let's just be quiet and think about that a little. And then let's think about what moves the needle. And after we sat there in silence for probably a couple of minutes, I said, here's what comes to me. It seems to me, if that's your talent, that what really moves the needle is really ramping up running properties through your evaluation process and having metrics around that, and having a certain number of properties evaluated every month. And he took that one idea, which was already basically in his head, and applied it and completely shifted his focus. And now he is making $4 million a year. But that's a perfect example of seeing things a little deeper from these thinking sessions.
Yeah. So as we get ready to wrap up here, and thank you for sharing that. So this template, is it a piece of paper that when it's completed, after you've gone through and done the homework to figure out, this 3-year plan, it's sort of phrases that you just repeat on a daily basis, or that addresses these key areas of,
Well, it's
romance, career, self, all
it's
that?
all basically a concise dialogue. Like on the personal side, you're going to be defining what are your top 3 values. Surprisingly, a lot of people don't know what their top 3 values are, and I found it's hard to live those values if you can't clearly state what they are. And there's a lot of things about being a person that we all want to be good listeners, and we want to be other people focused, not so self-focused. And a lot of things with being a person, and same with being a good romantic partner, appreciating your partner's good points and being the ideal partner for them. There's things about your health. We're defining what do you mean when you say I exercise consistently? What exactly does that mean? And then I explained, the 7 things we put in regarding your business. And like I said, what happens, you're feeding this to yourself every day. Well, for the first 21 days, the subconscious mind is going to reject it because it's not used to it. But once you go past 21 days, then the subconscious mind finally goes, oh, I give up. I'm okay. I'm going to feed it back up in your thoughts and actions automatically without thinking. And that's the magic of this. That's the science of this.
Bravo, John. Thank you so much. That's thinkitbeeit.com/cc.
And Karen, what I'm going to give you when your listeners come to that, I'm going to give you a 5-minute video that explains this thinking tablet and these thinking sessions, as well as a guide as to what to think about. And so I think, again, this is way more than just setting aside time to think. This is proactively, probably for the first time ever, proactively influencing your subconscious mind. And my challenge to your audience is do this thinking, these 2 times a week thinking sessions for 2 weeks, and just watch what happens. It's life-changing.
Yeah. Well, and I think you could also relate it to people don't necessarily understand nutrients, right? We consume food, right? But then
Right.
if we start to learn a little bit about it, you say, "Oh, I need vitamin D."
Yeah.
Or whatever, right? And you take it knowing that this is something that you need to do, but you don't necessarily you don't see it always on the external what it is, but you long term you're better off for whatever that supplement is that you need, vitamin B or whatever it is. And over time you start to have energy, a little bit more energy, you start to have these other things that you didn't know you were missing that nutrient until you started to feel it. So in this case, your
Yeah.
brain is starving for the right thoughts that you are hungry for so that you can achieve the things that's in your heart that you're not able to achieve. You can you can see it, but you don't know how to get there. So let your body, just like your body can heal itself in so many ways, we have, we've been given the gift of healing. Our bodies continue to heal until we're dead and not breathing anymore, and we have the ability to like that. And the mind is a big part of that. And then, all how it all relates to everything else. And you have figured out a way to, provide a nutrient to the brain that's necessary for the well-being of the people that are listening.
I love that. Well done.
Okay. So with that, anything else, John?
I don't know. It's been a pleasure. I love your questions. Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you so very much. I have really enjoyed having you on the show, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Okay, great. Thank
Great.
you.
Onwards and upwards, everybody.